What's up, everyone? This is Kurt Finn from Kurt Finn Music. I hope everyone had a very, very happy Christmas, and I'd like to wish everybody a very Merry New Year in the upcoming. I'm going to do something a little bit different here. I really loved seeing everybody's Spotify Unwrapped. It was really cool to see what everybody was listening to, and it was also very helpful to getting into new music. That being said, I'm going to do something a little bit different here. I'm going to go with my top 5 albums of all time as of right now, January of 2025. So I'm going to start at 5, and I'm going to work my way to number 1, which would be my favorite. I just want to give an honorable mention, which is now off the list, is Nick Drake, Brighter Later. I do love that album, but it has been knocked off. I'm going to start with number 5. This little beauty right here. The Smashing Pumpkins, Autumn. This is one of the newer Smashing Pumpkins albums that has come out. It is the last album with Jeff Schrader on it, but Autumn is a rock opera in 3 acts. It's actually 3 full records in this. It is Jimmy, James, and Billy quite possibly at their best. The reason why I love this album so much, there's so many musical landscapes on this album. Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, they're just so amazing. There are so many different musical landscapes. It's very music forward. I mean, to me, we always throw around the word genius. Billy Corgan is a genius. With Eha back and Jimmy Chamberlin drumming and also programming drums, the album is incredible. There's so many different landscapes on this album of different styles of music. If you're a Pumpkins fan, I know a lot of people didn't like this album due to the fact that it wasn't true to form, but to me, it is one of the greatest albums ever made. It's in my top 5, obviously. But this album, Smashing Pumpkins, Autumn, beautiful artwork, 3 records. I know it's a hard listen because it's 3 albums, but when you sit down and listen to the whole thing, the whole story, and then the other album in there is, of course, Chicago's own Bill Curtis narrating. But when you read the liner notes and you read everything about the Zero, everything that Billy Corgan has created, it's all right here. I highly recommend Autumn. Autumn comes in at number 5, the Smashing Pumpkins. And number 4, this is one of the quintessential hip-hop albums ever made. This is a Tribe Called Quest, Midnight Marauders. Yet again, another concept album. Again, this is one of the best hip-hop albums, if not the best hip-hop album I've ever heard. Got me into a lot of other stuff. Obviously, I'd listened to the Beastie Boys, and I was into, obviously, Tribe Called Quest and, other bands, hip-hop bands like that. But this album, especially Midnight Marauders, tells a great story. You can see the wonderful album cover. Has a lot of guests on it. Five Dog and Q-Tip at their best. I think their rhyming is incredible. And the whole concept of the album is really cool. Again, it's another album that you listen to front to back. Totally makes sense. It's a must-have album. Number 4, Tribe Called Quest, Midnight Marauders. And number 3 on my all-time favorite records ever made is this beauty, Miles Davis, In a Silent Way. This album changed my life, just like all these albums have. I mean, this album changed my life. I'd listened to jazz, and when I first heard In a Silent Way, I was floored. This album, the musical landscapes on it, I mean, just everything. I mean, it's got Chick Corea, Herbie Hancock, John McLaughlin's guitar work. So many people have been influenced by this record. I have a son named Miles because of Miles Davis, but this album, in its own right, is what got me, really hooked into Miles Davis. And then I went on to buy, a lot of the other albums. But In a Silent Way is just one of those albums, front to back. It's perfection. His style kind of changed after this. He went a little bit more psychedelic, but this was kind of the beginning of it. But it's another one coming in at number 3, Miles Davis, In a Silent Way, perfection. One of the greatest albums ever made. Now on to number 2. My Bloody Valentine. Loveless. Again, this is an album that when I first heard it, I was completely blown away. People call it shoegaze, psychedelic, whatever, but My Bloody Valentine, Loveless is one of the greatest albums ever made and that I've ever heard. The musical landscapes, Kevin Shields, Belinda Butcher, at the top of their game. They'd had a couple of albums before this, but this album in general, My Bloody Valentine, Loveless, is timeless. Again, the musical landscapes, the use of the guitars, the drum machines, the layering, everything about this album. I mean, he was never able to make another album like this. This was kind of a make or break album. It was so good, and so many people revered it. I mean, it's a must-have record, in a record collection. Much like the 3 albums prior to this, the moment I heard this record, I was hooked. I've probably listened to it in entirety. More days than I've been alive, probably. Hard to say, but coming in at number 2, one of the greatest, my favorite albums, is My Bloody Valentine, Loveless. I can't say enough about this album. It just, every time I turn it on from front to back, I'm brought right into a moment, and it's hard to describe for me, but this album is so important to everything. Music and in my life, the singing, the vocals, everything about it is perfection. Number 2 is My Bloody Valentine, Loveless. And number 1, of course, the greatest album I've ever heard, comes in at number 1. It is no secret to many people that know me very well. Greatest album of all time, Beach Boys, Pet Sounds. This album is the fabric of my life, is the fabric of my being. I think, again, it's, I've heard the Beach Boys when I was younger, and, Pet Sounds is one of those albums that's, when you listen to it front to back, that's it, right? From Wouldn't It Be Nice to God Only Knows to Caroline No, and all the instrumentation in it. Brian Wilson, to me, is another genius. Brian Wilson, I was lucky enough to go to Europe and see the Pet Sounds tour when he was playing Pet Sounds in its entirety. So I have connected with this album on more than one occasion and in more than one way. There's so much to say about this record. The instrumental pieces are beautiful, but from the moment I heard this record, and I was a Beach Boys fan, but the moment I heard Pet Sounds, like, everything changed in my life. Like, the landscapes, the way I saw color, the way I heard music, the way I heard vocals, the way I wrote songs. I think everything just changed after Pet Sounds, and it still does. I actually listened to it today before I had recorded this and thought about this, because Pet Sounds is so important to me. Front to back, I think there is no finer album. I think it's the greatest album. And my favorite song in the whole world on this, God Only Knows. It's just perfection to me. Brian Wilson used a lot of studio musicians on this, recorded most of the album while the Beach Boys were on tour. When they got home, most of the instrumentation was done. They added their vocals. I believe Carl added some stuff, some guitar parts and stuff like that. But it was basically, the genius of Brian Wilson and, the vocals of the Beach Boys, which make this album completely perfect. Top number 1 album of all time of Kurt Finn is the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds. So, in review, we'll go. Number 5, the Smashing Pumpkins, Autumn, a rock opera. And, 3 acts of amazing music. I know it's a lot to sit through, but I guarantee you'll love sitting through this record. Take a break, but enjoy it. Smashing Pumpkins, Autumn. And, of course, number 4, greatest hip-hop albums ever made, Tribe Called Quest, Midnight Marauders. Again, great concept album, front to back. Totally worth listening to. Number 2, quintessential, Miles Davis, In a Silent Way. Everything on this album, I think there's probably only about 3 songs, but it is just perfection. The guitar playing, from John McLaughlin is just incredible. And then, you know, Miles Davis in a Silent Way. Number 2, one of the greatest shoegaze albums ever made. And one of the most perfect albums I've ever heard, My Bloody Valentine, Loveless. And of course, number 1 album of all time, in my opinion, The Beach Boys, Pet Sounds. Always a pleasure. I hope you guys enjoyed this as much as I did. I hope you keep listening. Spin what you love what you spin. And have a great 2025, and maybe some of these records you'll listen to and enjoy as much as I do. Again, Kurt Finn signing off. I hope you enjoyed my top 5 albums of all time.